In today's video, I go birding in Maine for the first time ever while exploring some beautiful rocky shores, a national park, even a lighthouse, while having some amazing experiences along the way. All right, welcome back. I am now in Maine at the Belfast City Park in Belfast, Maine. We are coming towards the end of our East Coast trip. Again, not really a birding trip, so I didn't do a ton of birding, though I do expect to do a little more here in Maine. This is my very first stop in Maine. We definitely saw some birds in the drive, but let's pick up and record our first official Maine birds ever. My first time ever birding in Maine. Let's do it. Having just driven over from Vermont, it was already fairly late in the evening as we began our adventure. We walked out on the rocky shores, out to the water, to see if we could find any birds. I was secretly hoping for some shorebirds, but it was pretty late in October, or actually early October, which is fairly late for them to stick around in the area. The first few birds we picked up was an American crow, and then there were plenty of gulls nearby. Now back in Utah, I'm very used to seeing California gull and ring-billed gull being the most common, but here out east, it's almost all American herring gull, and that's what the majority of these were that I was seeing here, albeit different stages and plumages. There was one ring-billed gull, however, this smaller one right in the middle, I did notice too, so I filmed it as well. Even though a lot of these birds were common, it was still really cool to see them in a unique habitat like this ocean rocky beach, exhibiting different behaviors than I am used to seeing them do back home. And then I was really quite pleased to see a pair of common loon just off in the water a little bit away from shore. These diving birds feel like such a quintessential Maine bird to me. I don't know if the locals also agree with that sentiment, but for some reason I do think of Maine having loons.
Can I help you?
Alicia and I then drove back into the city as we were about to grab some dinner, but first we took a little stroll along the harbor walk. The harbor walk takes you right through downtown Belfast, passing by many restaurants and shops and the shipyard. This giant thing you see here is used to lift boats out of the water so they can be transported, cleaned, or whatever needs to be done to maintain them. And there were tons of ships in the harbor, all kinds of sailboats and other types of boats all over the docks, making a pretty cool scenic view just looking out over the water. While the scenery was phenomenal, the birding was not so great because everything was on the opposite shore, which makes sense. They will stay farther away from the people given the choice, and there were some big mud flats and shores over there for the birds to forage. I did spot a great blue heron across the way though, which is a pretty cool bird to tack onto the list. Interestingly, I was looking towards the docks and the tops of the poles to see if I could find any birds on them, but there was this kite device that mimicked a bird that was just flapping away in the wind. I assume that's to keep birds off of the boats and docks and keep bird poop clear of this area. Kinda interesting, though one herring gull did find its own post to sit on. This is such a cute little coastal town. I just love seeing the scenery. Not a ton of birds besides gulls, counted about 125 gulls, I believe. But that's okay, I'm just really enjoying the trip overall and the different sights. I don't know what it is, I really just love these seaside towns. There's something about them that's so cool and just like really unique that you have the ocean right here, habitat for birds and stuff, but all this different activity and economic things going on too with the shipyard and people fishing and stuff. But anyways, the sun is setting now, so that's probably gonna end the birding for today. We're gonna grab some food, which I'm very excited for, but make sure to stick around because tomorrow we're going to Acadia National Park. Of course, I had to sprinkle in a few highlights from the trip outside of birding too. Alicia and I stopped for dinner to get some lobster, which was incredible. When you're in Maine, you of course have to try lobster, and I got this platter you see right here. Super tasty. And while we ate, we got to enjoy this beautiful sunset with the lights from the city across the way. And the next morning, we were in Acadia. This is a national park I've wanted to explore for a very long time. I've heard such good things about it. We started with the Precipice Trail, thinking it was going to be a short, easy hike. Well, we were mistaken. Look at this rock face that we had to scale to get to the top of the viewpoint. It was unreal. Well, good morning from Acadia National Park. We just hiked up the precipice trail. We're on the top of it right now. I did not record much because I was too focused on climbing and staying as close to the rock as possible. If you are unfamiliar with the trail, I'm going to put a few pictures on the screen now, the few that I did take, but honestly, Google it and take a look and you'll know why I wasn't with my camera all the time. It was securely locked away in this pack right here because I did not want anything dangling off. I was just so focused on not slipping and falling and making our way to the top here. We did see a few birds up here near the top. I just had, I think, a few yellow-rumped warblers, potentially. They could be a different warbler species, but I'm leaning yellow-rumped just based off of like the little patches of yellow that I saw on the streaks. It maybe could have been a pine warbler or something. And then we heard a red-breasted nuthatch and some chickadees as well. But we're gonna continue along the trail and head back to the parking lot and keep exploring this amazing national park. The views from the top of this hike were definitely worth it. We got to see the towns around Acadia and the ocean views all around us, looking out at little ships off in the distance and the various islands and bridges we could see. It was honestly really stunning. Then we transitioned towards checking out Cadillac Mountain, which you need a permit to drive up. Thankfully, we were able to secure one a few days ago, and we took the drive all the way up the mountain and took in some more sights of this national park. At these higher elevation viewpoints, you get such good sweeping views all around the area. As for birds, there honestly wasn't a whole lot, sadly. I got a few that I noted down on my checklist but didn't get any media, so we headed back down the mountain towards our next destination, Bar Harbor, which is the little town just near Acadia National Park. The birds are honestly few and far between on this trip overall, but it is hard to complain with all of these beautiful views, the ocean just right behind me. The temperature is gorgeous right now. We're having such a great time exploring all the sights out here, even if we're not seeing a ton of birds. Well, hey, finally, a bird, and one we've seen many times this trip, but still it's always exciting when we come across some more species that I can put onto my eBird checklists, even though it was just a herring gull. Alicia was not too happy with this one though because it was fighting with another one nearby and she wanted them to get along nicely. But man, this shore path was still really stunning even without a ton of birds. There were some beautiful waterfront properties and hotels, big ships just in the harbor nearby too that were so picturesque. I really loved this one in particular. And the town itself was really cute. Very touristy for sure. Tons of ice cream shops, restaurants, tourist gift shop areas, plenty of flowers and beautiful landscaping. It was gorgeous and well worth a visit. One thing I did find particularly funny is there was this one restaurant that had pretty much all of the birds from my checklist solely on top of it. I looked out towards it and counted a ton of gulls. Again, mostly American herring gull. We made our way into the town to get some ice cream ourselves, which was awesome, of course. Ice cream is always great. And I did add one more new species to the checklist. You might have seen I actually missed this in the last shot, but I got some for sure rock pigeons. My first rock pigeons in Maine. So even though it's just a rock pigeon, it was very exciting. All right, Alicia and I have now made our way down closer to Portland, Maine. We're at the Maine Audubon Center. Now, not doing a ton of research going into this trip, I figured this would be as good of a place as any to come find some birds, and we just saw a ton at the feeders. Lots of white-throated sparrows, some wild turkeys, a few eastern bluebirds too, a couple of great birds to add to my main list, which is really awesome. As cool as Acadia and some of the coastal towns were, this was probably my favorite birding hotspot stop that we made. We were immediately greeted by turkeys as we got onto the property. The Audubon has a great visitor center and gift shop right there with a bunch of feeders out back, and the turkeys were just making their way right through the lawn, foraging alongside all of the people there, which was kind of funny that they weren't very skittish. Near the feeders has to be as good of place to look for food as any because birds will drop seeds all the time and the turkeys get those leftovers. Now some of those birds potentially dropping seeds included white-throated sparrows and a downy woodpecker that you see here. There was also a female northern cardinal on the right feeder, which is really awesome because those are a species we do not get in Utah, at least not very frequently. And then on a wire supporting some string lights, I got my very first eastern bluebird for Maine. Now these birds are certainly fan favorites. They're usually pretty easy to spot as they perch out in the open, surveying the area around them, and they of course have a beautiful blue color that contrasts really well with the orange wash on its belly. We're now just gonna walk some of the trails around here, see if we find any other cool species. I'm having a ton of fun. Even though this trip was not planned to be a birding trip and we're just picking up birds by chance, making a few odd stops here and there, I'm having a great time just really enjoying the nature and getting some of these birds onto my Maine list. I definitely want to come back here to bird someday, maybe during like the Maine fall migration or coming in the summer so I can see Atlantic puffins. That would be incredible too. I'm sure Maine has a ton to offer, and I definitely want to do a dedicated birding trip where I plan all of my spots out accordingly instead of just this haphazard look at the maps, look at eBird, see what looks good on the way kind of approach. But I'm still thankful just to be birding in a brand new state, and it's hard to complain with the stuff that we are seeing without putting too much effort into it. The feeders were really great, but we moved to some of the habitats on the property that we could walk through with their nature trails that were set up. There were a few sparrow species around foraging. I got great looks at this song sparrow, which is the most plentiful, most common you're likely to come across, I should say, widespread sparrow in North America. Moving more to some water habitat, I was actually able to pick up a new lifer. Out in the distance in the water, I saw what I at first naively thought were mallards, but looking closer, these are eider. Common eider, in fact, which is a brand new species for my life list. I'd never seen these before, so that was really cool. Then we switched towards scanning the treetops a bit, which created a warbler challenge that I am not used to. There was one bird hopping around the brush so quickly that was really hard to identify, and after a bunch of looks at this and checking some of the photos that I got of it, I believe this to be a magnolia warbler. And the reason I say that is it has a white eye ring, it has two distinctive wing bars, which a lot of other warbler species like pine warbler, which could have been a possibility, don't, has a grayish head, a white undertail covert, and just like a yellow belly with some light black streaks on the side. I maybe would have expected those black streaks to be a little darker on most magnolia warblers, but maybe this is a younger one. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with my assessment on the ID of this warbler? Then we wrapped up a very productive stop at the Audubon Center and went to our last birding location. Here we were looking mainly at the lighthouse in Portland, Maine, as it was a site Alicia really wanted to see. I wasn't sure if we'd come across too many birds here, but I had my camera with me just in case we came across something super cool. There were more eider out on the water, just sitting amongst the very calm waves, which is great to see those again. This is the lighthouse I'm referring to. Its name is the Portland Headlight, and it's actually Maine's oldest lighthouse. It looks pretty picturesque, honestly, sitting amongst the rocky shores with the blue water in the background. Well worth a stop, even if you do have to pay to get into this particular park. Turning back to our favorite birds of the trip, the American herring gull. I say favorite because they were pretty much everywhere we looked, and our most common species by far across this whole adventure. But we also had one great blackback gull to end the trip. All right, tucked into the hotel for the night, getting ready to turn in before we head back home to Utah tomorrow. It was an awesome adventure in Maine and in the Northeast overall. We had a really awesome time out here looking at the fall foliage and seeing some birds along the way. So I hope you enjoyed the birding adventures that I highlighted. Thank you as always for watching. See you in the next one. Happy birding.